Welcome. My name is Kate Remillard. I am on the marketing team at VHT Studio, and I just want to welcome you to Lunch with Lucy. Before we get to our guest today, just need to remind you that everybody is muted. So please add any questions you have for our guest into the Q&A box, and we will get to those at the end of the show. And you'll also want to stay on till the end because we will announce the 5 winners of our DoorDash gift card. And with that super quick intro, we'll get to Lucy, and here she is.
Hello, everybody. Just 1 second. I am just, here we go. Hello, everybody, and thank you so much for joining us. It's so great to be back at our event, at our talk show, and thank you for joining. And today's guest is our return guest, Richard Lutkus. So Richard is, he already met with all of you or some of you about cybersecurity, but now he's a director at Alex Partners, and it's slightly different directions that he's heading with cybersecurity. So hi, Richard, welcome to our talk show, and just a few words about yourself.
Sure. So I am a recovering lawyer, as I like to say. I left the law firm practice and have gone into consulting with Alex Partners. So my practice is focused on cybersecurity and digital investigations. So I happy to be back, Lucy. I had a really good time last time, and hopefully we'll have another spirited conversation today.
Yeah, we will have a slightly different angle, which will pertain more to today's issues and problems that we're all running into. I personally will share with everybody what I'm going through on a weekly basis. So I think it is a very important subject. And the first question I would like to start with is, phishing is one of the most popular scams. And realtors always on the run, you're always downloading your PDFs. Sometimes from the phone, you don't even see who is sending you things. And it is extremely dangerous, and it's dangerous not just for you, but it's also a threat to your clients. So let's talk about that, Richard.
Yeah, so I think, Lucy, you're absolutely right. One of the ways that is most popular for attackers, threat actors, hackers, whatever you want to call them, to get into an environment, either your email or your corporate computer systems, is through phishing. And for anyone who doesn't know, phishing is essentially sending someone an email that is trying to get them to do something, either click a link or open a file or something else. Occasionally it's a gift card scam, like, appearing to come from your boss saying, go buy me some gift cards from Apple or something. And so phishing is by and large the #1 way that hackers can get into corporate networks or your own email or computers. And it remains an extremely dangerous problem, and companies are struggling to really get their arms around how to stop it. Now, there are a lot of ways to mitigate it. One, of course, is employee training. You have to be aware. You have to be not moving too fast. You have to be focused and really paying attention to who the sender is, and make sure that you know the sender and make sure that you expect the email that they're sending. You just have to be a little suspicious, I'd say, which is unfortunate, but you have to, examine the email and make sure that it makes sense and that you don't have any qualms about what they're asking. And the other thing I'd say is any links that you see, really look at the link, because as we'll show you in a little bit here, domain names that are inside links can be suspiciously similar and be made to look like legitimate ones. Oftentimes this is how hackers get your bank account, is they send something that looks very much like your bank's name, and maybe there's one letter or part of a letter difference. And it says, click here to reset your account or to accept a bonus $100 gift for being a great customer, something like that, would probably never happen. Be suspicious of those things. The other thing to be aware of, especially in your world, is PDF files. They're pretty rampant in most businesses, but because of the nature of real estate, clients are providing you with all sorts of personal information about their name, address, phone number, residence, probably their IDs, maybe bank information and maybe checks. I mean, there's a fair amount of sensitive information that passes through your offices. So what I would say is, be careful about what things you open. And the reason I say that is because PDF files are capable of containing executable code that can release viruses on your machine and your network. So again, if you don't know who's sending a PDF and it seems too good to be true, or if the language in the email doesn't sound like how people talk in the United States, if it just sounds odd, I would not open it. Or pick up the phone and call them if it's someone that you do have a contact with and say, hey, did you send me this? Because taking the 10 seconds to do that could really avoid a huge problem. So yes, phishing, it's hard. And despite all the technical things, people still do it all the time. And we found a nice statistic. I think, Kate, if you could show that. There was a survey we found, we didn't do it, but survey we found that showed why employees are clicking and fall for these phishing attacks. So let's show that so people get an idea about, what's going on.
And training is important. At VHT Studios, we go through training constantly. And first I thought, oh my goodness, what a waste of time watching all those videos. But now I understand it is so important and the videos are not a waste of time. Yes, training is important. So 23% being pressured or stressed.
Moving too fast, yeah. I think that goes along with it. And I think really the top three are kind of related. Actually, the top four really are people like on the go, they're on their phone, they're just trying to get through their dozens of unanswered emails or more, and they're just moving too fast to really give consideration to security. So this is pretty telling in terms of why people believe that they fell for things. It's kind of oh, I woke up at 5 and I checked my phone and clicked something before I was really awake, or I was getting in the car and I saw something come through and I just wanted to see what it was because I was expecting such and such from another deal. And I think these are the times when you really have to, have some focus on, what you're doing and just slow down a bit so that you're not making mistakes.
But so let's go to the slide that you were just going to show, Kate. I think it is very important.
Yeah.
How similar actually the links are.
Yeah. So this is an example of what's called a homoglyph attack, which is where you take a domain name and you change something very, very minor so that when someone is in a rush and they're not being careful, they don't notice it. And so if you look at the top one is clearly cigarpage.com. And the one at the bottom looks a lot like Cigar Page, especially if you kind of back up, but you'll notice that the G is actually a Q. So if you look at the difference between a G and a Q, it's not very much, but the one on the bottom is a completely fake version of that Cigar Page. Now, the other thing you're going to notice is, well, hey, I see this little security lock to the left. Aren't I supposed to trust those? Well, the person who created this fake site can also buy a security certificate and make their fake page appear to be secure. So what they're doing is they're basically tricking you here and betting on the fact that you might not notice that the Q and G are actually different. So this is how detailed these attacks can be. It can really be this simple. And it might not be a big deal unless you're into cigars, if you get fall for this one. But let's say it's your bank. Let's say it's medical records. Let's say it's anything related to finance, your credit cards, your anything that's important that could cause a loss for you. This is something to be aware of and really pay attention to what you're clicking. A lot of times what you can also do is if you're really not sure and there's a link in an email, you can copy that link, like the actual URL of the link, and put it into like Microsoft Word or Notepad and see what the link actually says under it. If it just says like click here and you copy it and you put it into Notepad, it's going to show you what the actual URL or the website address is, and then you can see, oh, this is fake. It's not Chase's bank, it's Chase Bank or something. You get what I'm saying. So that's what I would recommend if there are links that don't have the address and just say like click here to reset your password. You really don't know where you're going, and if you're suspicious about it, one way to do that is to right click, say copy URL, and paste it into Notepad, and then you can examine it. Just like this.
And what happens if you do click on the link? and then you realize that, oh my God, I should not have done that?
Well, if you click on the link, it doesn't necessarily mean that something immediately happens, but it could take you to like a login page where it's like, oh, please provide your, Office 365 login or something. And this is what we see a lot of business email compromise happen this way, because they'll send things that they try to make it appear it's from Microsoft. And you'll go there, and let's say you do actually give your Office logins, then they can literally go and log into all of your corporate email, or your Gmail, or whatever it is, and they can make sites look exactly like the legitimate one. It's actually not that hard. So what they do is they'll say, well, let's figure out what this company uses for their email server, which is, again, maybe 15 minutes of research. They'll mimic that page, and then they'll target everyone in the company and say, well, there's 80 people in the company, or let's say there's 100. Let's say one of them clicks through and gives us their credentials. Great, we got one. And once they're in, then they can basically act as if they're that person. And so a lot of times what they'll do is they'll focus on, CFOs or someone in accounting who has the ability to send wires and say, oh, I want a wire sent to this bank for this. And, they'll try to find someone with enough authority to execute some sort of theft, or they'll sit in there for months potentially and learn who people are, learn how they speak, and then launch an attack that's a lot more convincing. So sometimes these attacks are not instant. It can take a while for them to pan out. So again, this all just kind of points to the idea that you really have to be careful what you're clicking and where you're going.
And let's talk about passwords. That's also very important. So the security with passwords, and where the passwords are kept. Last time you were with us, you were saying 1Password website is a good one, but lately it's not as popular as it was a couple years ago. I am guilty. I still have my passwords on the Excel sheet. That is totally unacceptable, but it's kind of easy. So what I'm doing now, I have it on my Excel sheet, but I have it on the USB port, so I can just at least take it in and out, and I try not to keep it in my computer. But passwords are important. And also, I remember you were talking about characters. You can't just have my password as Lucy Edwards and number 2, for example, that you should have different characters.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest problem is when people use dictionary words, because it's pretty easy to guess those. I mean, any attacker who's worth anything is already going to have lists of dictionary-based words, and then all they do is they use those and then put like 4 or 5 digits of numbers after them and maybe symbols, and they've pre-computed most of those passwords. So the real reason you don't want to reuse your password is because of how many breaches there are. And what happens is, if, let's say, your Twitter account gets breached, which I'm sure is possible, maybe it's already happened. What they do is, as soon as the hackers have that, let's say they can actually access, let's just say for the theme of our discussion, that they can access the unencrypted version of your password. So they can see the password is Lucy1234 in this example, right? What they're going to do is they're going to take the email address associated with your account, the username, and the password, and they're going to go and try it on every popular site. They're going to try it on Facebook. They're going to try it on LinkedIn. They're going to try it on Gmail. And they're just going to, they basically automate this with computers that are just built to go out and try the top 1,000 sites. And they're going to try those combinations and maybe different variations. And they're going to see what sticks, essentially. So when one thing is breached, if you're using that password elsewhere, it's very likely that they're going to get into another one of your accounts. So the best practice is really have a unique password for every account you have. I mean, personally, I have, I don't know, I would guess over 800 accounts, and I have a password for every one of them. And
Where do you keep your passwords? So 800 passwords you cannot remember possibly.
Nope, I don't remember any of them, and I don't want to, because that's a risk. So what I do is I have a password manager. I do use 1Password. There's other ones that I can put in the chat. Let's see, I'll just list them here. These are the ones that I'd recommend. KeePass is free and it's only on your computer. Bitwarden is kind of like 1Password in that you can also sync it so that it's like on your phone and things. So KeePass is good if you mainly use your computer. If you have to sync it to your phone, I still think 1Password is top notch. But it takes a little bit of learning, I'll say, because you have to learn like saves passwords. You know, you have to use it. You have to just get in the habit of doing it, because if the alternative is that you have a much higher risk of getting, you know, attacked or breached or losing accounts or losing money or losing PII of your customers if you're using the same password for every account. So I know it's a pain, but it's a lot safer.
What about how you call it, dual?
Yeah, multi-factor authentication, I think is what you're getting at. So, yeah. And actually 1Password and maybe Bitwarden, they also help you recognize when a site has that available as a setting. So if a site, you know, has that as a security setting, it might say, hey, 2-factor authentication or multi-factor is available for this, you should set it up. And this is one of those things where when you log in, you put your username, you put your password, and then the next screen is like, put in your 6-digit code. That is the multi-factor. It's something that changes, you know, on the server side, and you have to put it in order to authenticate that it's really you. And so those codes you can get from 1Password or Google Authenticator. You can also get them through SMS messages, although those are not the safest for reasons we can chat about later today.
Really? Because that's what I do. And I was so proud of myself.
Well, sometimes companies don't have other forms, and then they use SMS as the only one. So in some instances, you don't have a choice. But when there's a choice between using SMS versus an authenticator application, the authenticator is much better.
Someone is asking, how about Keeper? Keeper, capital K.
I have not personally used Keeper. I don't know.
So can we go over the polls, Kate, and see? So we had 3 polls here so far.
Yes, we can. So we first asked if you use the same password for all your accounts. You'll be proud, Richard. So 53% of the group here said they have different passwords for every account. And 43% said they use 2 to 3 different passwords. And 1% said that they use the same one every time.
Yep.
Well, but that's good. It was much worse a year ago.
Yeah.
So what's the second poll?
So then we asked where people keep their passwords, and 46% said in a notes app on their phone. 32% said on a sticky note, and 18% said in their head, and then a few people said in an Excel document.
Well, so what would you say about the first one, the largest percentage that they keep it on their cell phone? In notes?
What I'll say is anything that is in notes on your, let's say it's an iPhone, anything in iCloud, like, so if you use iCloud as backup, it's not encrypted. So your notes are being stored on Apple servers. It's not encrypted. I think it's kind of risky personally, because let's say they get in your iCloud account, then they have access to everything you have in there. And the idea is to, let's say if they get into one account, you want to make sure they don't get into anything. So I see someone else said, I have it in Google Docs. What if they get in your Google account? Then suddenly they have access to all your accounts. So you have to think like that. Like you want to try to minimize the effect of losing one account such that when you get a breach notice, you just don't care. You're like, well, whatever, I'll reset it. And hopefully the breach notice didn't include things like your data was taken or anything, and just that the password was leaked. But if you can reset your password, then potentially there's really no harm. But if your password is one that you reuse, then the harm is immediate, and you have to spend the next 2 days changing everything. And that's when that happens, it's kind of, what are you gonna do? Put life on hold for 2 days to change passwords? I mean, I guess it's yeah. LastPass is another good one. Raphael just mentioned that one.
So I would like to stay on cell phone issue. And I remember you mentioned a story that one of your clients lost $2 million in Bitcoin because someone broke into his cell phone.
Yeah, so this is something that's increasingly difficult I just put a link, but I want to go to that story, but I put a link for everyone where you can go to this website and check your emails and see if they've been breached in any data leaks in the past 10 years or so. So you can actually see like which sites may have lost your email and password. So check that out. If you have a red screen, that means that you're in there, unfortunately. So that's a good tool, and that's actually built into 1Password. It's called the Watchtower portion. So if you do use 1Password, make sure Watchtower is on because it accesses that site all the time, and then it'll update you when there's a new breach. So just want to mention that. But yes, back to the story. $2 million in Bitcoin stolen. So what happened was this was actually a Simjacking attack against a cell phone provider, which I suppose I shouldn't name, but it's
so before we continue to the story, since we're on Simjacking, let's explain what it is, because I never heard about it until I spoke to you.
Yeah, so Simjacking is where a let's just call them a hacker convinces your cell phone company that that they're you and you got a new SIM card for your phone, and so they'll call the cell phone company and convince the customer support people that you have a new SIM card and they should replace it. And so what that essentially does is it allows the attacker to take over your cell phone service. Now, the reason that's really bad is because if you're using text message as your second authentication, or your multi-factor authentication, they can essentially then take over any account that has that. And in this instance, the attacker called the cell phone provider, and my guess is that they had to call multiple times. And what they do is they try to get to a customer support representative who isn't trained properly, or doesn't know what they're doing, or doesn't have enough training to be suspicious about these sorts of things, and convince them to violate policy and switch the SIM card. You can call your providers and ask them to put a lock on any SIM transfers. Some are better than others about that. You just have to call ahead and make sure that, you know, SIM replacement is essentially not allowed on your account unless you verify it with, you know, so many pieces of personal information. Hopefully the attacker doesn't have those. But the idea here is when the attacker can take over your SIM card, they suddenly can get all of those two-factor codes. And in the story here, this person was somehow specifically targeted. They did a SIM swap and logged into Coinbase. I think it was Coinbase. And then it basically initiated a transfer of all the Bitcoin he had into their wallet. And then they put it through a mixer, which mixes up those Bitcoins into a lot of other coins so that no one could trace it, and off they went. And so this person lost $2 million because his cell phone company wasn't paying attention and wasn't following protocol. So, you know, people, you don't realize like how easy these things can be when like one person is breaking the chain of security. So in his case, there was very little that can be done, because once it gets put through these tumblers, these cryptocurrency tumblers, it's essentially untraceable. So he unfortunately lost all of it.
Yeah, and with Bitcoin, if you lose that's it. It's not like a checking account. It's not like a savings. It's like an investment.
And it's not insured. None of it. So.
Yeah, well, let's switch to a very important subject that is also related, defense in depth, and be up to date on the technology, on hardware, on software, on proper training. I am so thankful that at VHT Studios, our IT department is going out of their way. And we actually went from like 70-some% to 99%. So we have, as a company, we have a great record, but I'm sure that our IT department spent a lot of frustrating minutes training us. And yeah, so let's talk about defense in depth.
Yeah, defense in depth is essentially not relying on one method of security. So if you just say, you know what, I don't care. I'm gonna keep all my passwords the same. I'm just gonna get, you know, an antivirus on my computer. That is not going to work. That is one attack vector. And that antivirus only protects against known viruses that have a signature that have been analyzed, or things that act like viruses. So that's one part of your security. The other part is a lot of based on how you think and how you act. So like we're saying, if you keep your passwords in an unprotected spreadsheet on your computer and your computer's password is 1234, and you travel to hotels, let's say you leave your laptop in a hotel. How do you know that someone's not in that hotel room, opens your laptop, 1234, goes get your passwords? I mean, we've had situations with clients who've sent employees to Asia, and they have actually determined that someone imaged the entire laptop while they were out of their hotel room to steal intellectual property. And then they tried to put it back like all just so, but they like left a screw out. And so someone's like, hey, I found a screw, and it was from their laptop. So I'm not saying be suspicious of your hotel cleaning folks, but it's part of what I'm saying is that if you're super secure in one way, but then not secure in another way, it's making it easy for the hackers. And what you want to do is be so obnoxious to the hacker that they move on to somebody else that's easier. So if you're using, you can use a spreadsheet, but at least password protect it and make it something that's a unique password and try to change it as much as you can. So you don't have to get a password manager, but they're much more secure than keeping in spreadsheets and things. So defense in depth is really about having multiple ways of protecting yourself. So you want to use different passwords, you want to use complex passwords, you want to have a security system for your computer, but also make sure that your network, like if you have an office, you want to make sure that your network actually has proper firewalls that are updated. You want to have intrusion detection systems. Those are often built into firewalls. Companies like Ubiquiti have equipment that actually includes some very advanced detection of threats, so that if someone gets in your network, it'll actually notify you and prevent them from getting elsewhere. So, and those, they're a little bit more expensive than your consumer router, but I'll give you another story. This just happened like a month or so ago, right before tax season. There was an accountant. I got a call from a prior client who said he was helping an accountant who lost all of his clients' data in a breach. I think he said like the last 10 years of client data. So you can imagine the stuff that's in tax returns and attachments and things. And the reason the attacker got in is because he was using a decade-old Apple Wi-Fi router that had never been updated, and therefore didn't have any security patches applied, and had the default username and password that came with it when it was set up. And it was by pure chance that he never got hacked before, apparently, because he just never took care of making sure that access point was secure. And so, he's an accountant. It's maybe not his job, but he probably had some IT person set it up for him. Who knows? But this is a defense in depth story, because he was like, I had antivirus on my computer, and we're like, well, that wasn't the problem. The problem was you had all your files on a server in your office, and you had essentially an open door for the attackers to come into, electronically open door. And so once they figured out that this firewall, this Apple firewall, was extremely old and was not updated, it made it very easy for them. And so they got in and took everything, and no one even noticed, for quite a while, until the attacker was like, hey, pay me 10 Bitcoin and you'll get your data back. So, otherwise he may not have ever known. But that's, it just shows you there's multiple layers where you can apply security to. It's not just on your computer. It's not just using passwords for accounts. It's how do you apply it at all different parts of your life. And some people, we always joke about the Post-it note on the monitor, but in a way, the Post-it note is non-digital. It's not like an attacker is going to come through your computer and see that. The threat there is someone sees it from through your window or in your office or something. But in some ways, the Post-it note is more secure than this guy's firewall was.
So we can well, don't say that, because now we're going to.
No, I'm not encouraging it, Lucy.
Yellow stickers all over my monitor. I have a question. What about computer generated from Apple for sites, and computer generated passwords from Apple for each site?
Yeah, those are actually pretty good. So if you have a Mac and the Mac suggests strong passwords, those are actually pretty good because they're long, they're varied, and the length of that password is such that it's not easy to crack it. So if someone was able to, try to break in your account, let's say they had the username and they had like a hashed version of your password, which is like an encrypted version. It would be extremely time consuming and probably impractically expensive and lengthy to try to crack it. So the ones that Apple suggests are pretty good. And then Apple keeps those generated passwords, like if you're using Safari, it'll put them into Apple's keychain, which is very secure. So if you're on a Mac, you can use the built-in Safari keychain password manager, and that's just fine.
That's great. As a matter of fact, I wanted to talk about personal security checkup. So we all have medical, physical checkups. We have our car is ready for a checkup every so many miles or thousands of miles. What about security checkup? How you take care of it? And I had never done that before, and I never even heard of it. So it will be great to see about our audience, whether they were involved in it.
Yeah, I think this is a good poll. And just for everyone's forward-looking thought process, I have a link I'm going to send. We're going to have VHT send out on my behalf after we're done talking, that has a list of kind of personal security things to consider. And it's a lot of tools and approaches that will help you. I would say go through that list and see what you're willing to bite off and learn about and try to implement into your daily life. And it's all about privacy and security for your own world. So it can apply personally, it can apply to small businesses. And I would say it's a very good single point of resource for many different ways of securing your digital life. So please review that. I really encourage everyone, bookmark it, periodically go back and review it. It is updated from time to time. And as new things come out, new things will be put on there. It's not something I maintain, but it's something that I watch and look at. It's kind of an open source for the community, just the benefit of everybody. So I wanted to share it because it's something that, when my family's like, hey, how do I do something? And my dad's like, hey, I want to secure this or that. I'm like, well, I would do this, and here's a guide, and then he goes through it. So it's supposed to be made to be a little bit user friendly. You don't have to go hire, an IT guy unless you want to. I would say for anything larger than just your personal life, it might be a good option to have an IT security audit if you have a small business. Like if you're running any more than like 10 people in an office, you probably need someone to come in to really look at it, because they're the ones who are going to be able to tell, is your firewall up to date? Are you actually inspecting network traffic to see if there's any threats or hackers trying things? Do you have proper alerts set up? Is your antivirus up to date? All those things, and then taking it as a whole. So security audits are good because it gives you an idea about what is your risk. It's a risk assessment, and without knowing that, you're kind of flying blind and just hoping. So it's a good thing to do if you have the time and money and want to shore up your security.
And so we have a couple more questions. Number one, we have a question from Matt Lucarelli. Thank you, Matt. How do you secure your password manager from being compromised?
Your password manager is generally, it depends on which one you have. So for some of them, you can use a hardware key that is like a little, actually, let me get it. Hold on one second. I've got one.
Oh, it's a physical device, so it's not online.
I don't know if the camera can show it. I'm going to see if it will. It thinks it's a background, so I'm sorry. Maybe if I put it by my face.
Yeah, you got it.
Right there. It's like a little, this one works for iPhone and for computers. And that's a little hardware encryption device. So that's called, it's essentially allows you to plug it in and then you just tap it and it provides the security. So that's one way to do them. And that integrates with it might integrate with Bitwarden. I'm not sure if 1Password supports that yet. But that's something that you can use. It's called essentially a hardware encryption key or password key. I would say beyond that, for other password managers, it essentially means you have to remember 1Password, and that's why at least in that company's name, they chose to just call it that obvious thing, because you have one master password that allows you to get in to everything else. So those are extremely secure. The password managers that I recommended is and LastPass. And what they do is they essentially encrypt all of your data so that if anyone has access to your computer, they can't actually access your passwords and your usernames because all of those are encrypted inside the software. And they use extremely strong encryption. So the likelihood of someone getting into your password manager is very low. And so the one attack method is really knowing that password. So I would say for your password manager, you want it to be something memorable but long. So think about passphrase instead of passcode for a password manager. Something like, think of like a sentence that you like, or maybe lyrics from your favorite song, and make that your passphrase, because you can type it quickly because it's like a sentence. You don't want to use crazy characters and stuff for your password manager because you might be typing it a whole bunch during the day because a lot of these will automatically lock and things. So a passphrase is good. Just make sure it's long, you know? So try to find your favorite line from a poem, whatever it is, and something you like typing every day. And that's, you know, that's a good way to do it. Just make sure it's long.
So we have a couple questions, but before that, I would like to, so I have some statistics here, and I'm looking forward to your comment. According to a Clark School study at the University of Maryland, the approximate rate of cyber attacks is every 39 seconds. That's incredibly high.
Yeah, I mean, it's an interesting statistic because there's actually, if you look at the overall landscape of attacks, they're actually constant. I mean, at the firm I was at and the one now, they're literally getting attacked every second of every day by somebody.
Wow.
And so it doesn't mean you're getting breached. It just means you're constantly in defense mode. And so the more, I would say this is true for any major corporation that has a, you know, valuable assets of any kind, whether it be intellectual property or financial information or health information. It's a constant game of keeping attackers out. So 39 seconds might actually be, how often is an attack successful? Maybe. It's possible. But the threats are pretty constant. I mean, I'll say that I've done some demonstrations to clients to show them this, and I essentially will create like a little computer in the cloud on like Google Cloud or any of these other services that like DigitalOcean, and I'll literally just turn it on, and then I'll put a monitor on it, and within minutes it's already getting hammered with attacks. And that's just the reality, is that there's people out there that are scanning for computers that pop online, and then they try to immediately attack it. So, and it's all automated. It's not like some kid is out there like, oh, a new computer, and like manually does it. They actually have set up entire systems just to look for these things in an automated way. And as soon as something pops up, they try to attack it.
So we should turn our computers off at night.
Well, this is why it's important to have a nice firewall at your place of business or your house, because that's the line of defense that really protects you against, you know, your computer having to take the brunt of it. So you put these firewalls in front of your computer, if you think of it that way, that protect your computer from the open internet. And, you know, if you have like Xfinity or Cox or AT&T, a lot of time they come with like a basic firewall, and you know, you can do okay with that. But what I usually recommend is putting in some, you know, more business grade equipment that has advanced functions that allows you to actually detect patterns, because the patterns are what's going to alert you that something's going on.
So we do have a couple questions, and I also wanted to hear the polls. So Kate, we still have the results from the last one.
Yeah.
I don't, so someone was saying about post-it notes, but I personally think that I guess post-it notes are not that bad after what I heard. But as long as you, and then someone was saying that they keep them in a safe place and they keep the journal in a safe place. So maybe that is also a good idea. What do you think?
Yeah, so written passwords are fine. They're as secure as that physical notebook is. So if your notebook gets lost at a restaurant and it's got sites and user, then it's just the same as a breach. So don't lose the notebook. So you just have to be careful of that, because just because it's in a notebook also doesn't mean the attacker is not going to get the password, and they don't get it from you. They'll get it from attacking that service's website, you know, so it's not always the case that that you are the source of your own password breach. It could be that they were attacking, you know, Instagram's website, and that's where they got it because of some bug in the website. And so in that case, you know, if they have access to it and they can decrypt the passwords, which is usually unlikely for things like Instagram, because they use, you know, very secure encryption on them. But just because it's in a notebook doesn't mean it's not going to get leaked. It just might mean you have to change it and erase it and switch it at some point. So yeah, that's what I'd say about written passwords.
Should a McAfee surface for an individual?
Sorry, what was that, Lucy?
Should a McAfee, maybe a
McAfee.
It's okay. That's what I'd say. My favorite antivirus is Bitdefender by far. I think it's the most reliable, most updated. It's not even that expensive, really. I think you can get like, I want to say like 5 or 10 computers, maybe for like $90 or $100 a year. So you can cover like your entire house, maybe, or small business. So that's the one that I prefer.
Can you put it in?
And that's just personal choice. I uninstall McAfee and put Bitdefender on, but it's just my world.
Put it in the chat, please, Richard, just for someone like me who never heard of it. And what about the polls, Kate? So what do we have?
Yes, so we had asked if you have ever done a security checkup. So 49% said no, 28% said they would like to, and 23% said yes, that they had done a security checkup.
That is fabulous.
Yeah.
That is amazing. That's by far higher number than I ever thought it would be. So congratulations to the 23%. And to the 28% who is going to do it. I'm part of it. I will definitely have my security checkup. Do we have any more questions before we wrap up? We have 2 more minutes. So I encourage you to ask any questions. And I also would love to hear from you the feedback. What do you think about our talk show? And do you want to see our guest back? What other questions you would like to ask our guest? So please let me know. You all have my email. You obviously received them quite a bit, so please reply. This is fabulous. Thank you very much, Virginia. And again, if you have any comments, questions, suggestions, we are here. Very useful and informative. Thank you, Tacey.
Let's see, we have one more question. Let's get to this one. Mary Ann asked, what do you do if you have found a dark web on your security search?
What is dark web?
So you can't really even get to the dark web unless you are using Tor, which is an anonymous proxy. So if you're just on your computer going to Google and searching for stuff, you can't even access the dark web that way. It might, sites might say they're dark web, but they're not. Unless you're using a specific Tor browser, you're not even going to be able to get to it. And I would say if you are doing that, it's a very target-rich environment and very dangerous. So I would say, unless you really know what you're doing, stay away from Tor.
Thank you.
There's almost no legitimate reason to use it, unless you are maybe a journalist and need to be protected against, leaking information or letting your source out. So I would say stay away from things like that as much as you can.
So Mary Ann is saying no. It says a dark web has your info. Is that?
I mean, that sounds like probably an attack. I'm not sure. That's a very bizarre phrase.
Well, you see,
I mean,
coming up with new adventurous things there. So to make it difficult for someone like your company.
If you have a pop-up that says the dark web has your data, that's probably suspicious. I don't know where it's coming from or what the context is, but yeah, that's not the best. If you're talking about that site I put in, that have I been owned, That means that whatever site is listed there is one that has leaked your information, and I would change the password that you have for that site immediately. I think that's
Awesome.
what she's probably getting at.
Yeah,
Thank you.
I think so too.
Yeah.
Yeah, she said, okay, she's gonna change her passwords. All right, so we need to wrap up. This has been super informative. Richard, where can people get a hold of you, reach you? I know we're gonna share out kind of like your security checklist after the show.
Yeah, so we can put my contact info with that list. And you know, my company does consulting for some of the biggest companies in the world. We're a global consulting company, so we're used to handling extremely complex, very high stakes matters. But we also have subcontractors with, you know, that can work with you if you want to do like a test of your systems and things like that. So, you know, if you do want to, if you are interested in that, you know, it's something we can help facilitate.
Awesome.
And we will be sending a recording. And also, if you will please go to youtube.com/Lucy Edwards VHT, you will have access to all Lunch with Lucy, as well as Get Real with Lucy, with absolutely fabulous interviews with leaders in real estate industry. So I encourage you to visit the YouTube, obviously subscribe. And if you like some of the interviews, please like them and comment. Would love to hear from you. But yes, it's on, or you can go to vht.com/learn. It's my page where you can find the YouTube channel. And again, all the recordings for Lunch with Lucy are there. But this particular one will be emailed to everyone who was registered. So you will get the link to the recording. So thank you so much for asking.
Yes, and our next show next month is on June 15th, and it's with a very special guest. We have the president of the National Association of Realtors, Leslie Ruda-Smith. So we're super excited about that. We're going to be talking about the market, what to expect in third and fourth quarters this year, and all the craziness happening right now in the industry. So look out for that invite, which will be coming soon too.
Thank you, Richard. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. Have a great day, and we'll see you next month. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks for having me.
Thanks.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.